Well, hey, thanks for taking the time to join me here in the talk. I'm going to go over something that I think isn't talked about enough, and that is thinking about how platforms and platform engineering differs in private cloud, or when you're running your own platform, whether you're building it, which I think is a terrible idea, or you're using more of an off-the-shelf one, kind of assembling how you do it from existing platforms, and you're running typically in a larger organization where you have private cloud, what you take advantage of, what is more necessary than maybe in other organizations. And what I've seen over the past 7, maybe even 10 years when people are running platforms, what works for them. So, I think we're at this phase of platform engineering where it's subsumed all the other stuff. We've kind of continued the evolution from the previous ways of running infrastructure, putting it together, and focusing on how do I have that infrastructure or platform, as we say, in place that helps me not only run, but also to some extent develop the applications that we have and also be able to upgrade it, do all the kind of things that you need to manage it, to run that stuff. And what I find is that people who are in typical large organizations, not tech companies, where they run, as we'll see a lot of their applications there, they're very hungry for anything that they can get as far as experience and tips and things like that when it comes to doing platform engineering, because they run a lot of their own applications. So this is a great time to kind of help out that kind of mainstream of people who are doing things. Now, as my background, I've been really lucky for the past 10 years to work at Pivotal, and then that was acquired by VMware, and now we're Tanzu in the Broadcom world, the Tanzu division there. And this has given me the chance to study exactly what I was just talking about, how large organizations are doing software, writing it, running it, all of that stuff. Write several books, most of which you can now download the PDFs for free. I do a lot of podcasts. I was an industry analyst at a place called Red Monk and then 451 Research. I used to do programming. I did some M&A here, all sorts of stuff like that. If you're interested, feel free to engage with my brand. It's enjoyable to see numbers go up. So let's start with something that I alluded to, is thinking about, so if the point of a platform is to help out with the application development aspect, the last part, running the applications, but also help developers understand how to interact with it, how to architect it, all the kind of stuff that's needed to support developers in the broad way, which I think is something people forget a lot about, is that attention to developers. We should start with where the apps are, where are they running, because that's going to determine a lot of what we do platform-wise. Now, my belief, based on looking at these kind of surveys and things for years, talking with people, is that about 50% of workloads run on private cloud. Or, this can be on premises, this can be a stack that you fully control that just kind of uses the lower level infrastructure for public cloud. It could be a managed service provider running it for you, but you have that sense of it's your thing that you're in charge of. And I think a lot of it in large organizations is on premises. And a lot of what you hear about public cloud is based on revenue numbers, the amount of pay that's going into it, or if an organization is using any amount. But I think when you start looking at things by workloads, which is an old word for applications and services, you get a much different picture about where the apps are running. And it's pretty much held steady like this for many, many years. And I don't think there's going to be a huge amount of variation in the next 5 years or so. Now, to back that up, here's something from IDC. They're very specific. You can't call it private cloud. They call it dedicated environment. I'll let you do the mapping in your head. But when you look at, and this is only the most recent one, they don't really like you using things older than 18 months. I'm not sure why. It was good then. It'll be good now, just like a tasty meal, yeah, that you might have, well put together sandwich. But you see this kind of most years, again, it goes back and forth, doesn't really go back and forth, but there's a stasis that we're in now, where if you take out the public cloud stuff, you're left with not public cloud. And you can see that it's kind of in this range. Now, there's other charts from many different organizations, studies, even quotes from people like, the CEO of AWS, where the estimate is, somewhere between 10 to 40% in that quote of workloads that their largest customers are still not in public cloud. And someone like, I think it's the Barclays research, you can see that their estimate is it's around, I think it was like 55 or 60, something like that. I've got these slides in longer versions of this presentation if you're interested. But that leads me to that conclusion that it's like 50% of workloads are running in private cloud, 50% in public cloud. Maybe it's 60-40, maybe it's 40-60. Doesn't really matter. You've got a lot of applications running in on premises and also dedicated environments, private cloud. So then it becomes important to ask, okay, so what is a platform? Now, you can't have a talk about platform engineering without the wonderful March 2018 reference to this definition of platform engineering. So I've had it. We'll move on. Now, I think of this visual that also, thankfully, is very prevalent nowadays that you see of what a platform is, really explains a lot of what's going on. And it's always good if you're interested in doing platform engineering to go back to this, no matter how many times you've seen it, right? Of course, from the Cloud Native Computing Foundation. And when you look at this, what's valuable is to look at it from a developer's eyes, an application developer's eyes, where they have a lot of the tools, a lot of the functionality they need to not only write their applications, but run their applications. And it also has the capabilities that operations people need to run the applications to make sure it's instrumented and manageable. And what's very important about that diagram is that infrastructure is not really a huge part of it, right? So if you're thinking about Kubernetes, just putting that in place as a platform, clearly it's not, right? Like it's, as that community says, it's a platform for building platforms, right? So that on its own is just infrastructure, but you're going to need to build a platform on top of it. And that's what I think the CNCF is showing us here. Now you can go look at all of the, like the one I work at here, all the vendor diagrams of what they do, or the project diagrams, maybe even those whiteboard walls if you're, going down the rocky path of building your own platform from scratch. It's all going to kind of reduce down to what that CNCF platform is, right? And so really think about that platform and keep in mind that the point of it is for it being for developers, because once you lose sight of that, things get a little weird in the way you're doing stuff. So let's look at how things are different when it comes to large organizations, private cloud platform. We still have this aspect that I've mentioned several times, that the platform is for the developers. And this is something that, thankfully, I think in the past 2 years in the platform engineering community, a lot of the original people who came up with the concept of platform as a product have been promoting this, and it's been taken up. But what you're doing is you're product managing the platform. Now, this is a lot different than IT service managing the platform, or even DevOpsing the platform, or SREing it, right? You're thinking about who your customers are, developers, and you're making sure they are having a good experience. You're changing the functionality in there. Just think about it as an application, like a product manager would. And so always keep that in mind, that the customers are your developers, right? Of course, you've got, what do you call them? Other stakeholders, security people, operations stuff. Those are kind of table stakes. I mean, I think saying that something is secure and should be performant is like saying that food should be tasty and sustain you, right? Like if it's not real, right? But the real work is making sure that it's usable by customers. Now, in large organizations, you're going to be spending a lot of time on what I would call marketing. Not always the best word with the technical audience. You can think of it as community management, right? So you're building up this community around the platform you have. Remember who your customers are, the developers. And you're not only training them, going over what it is, but you're really trying to build up an identity. In the same way, I mean, this is product stuff, right? In the same way that a product has an identity, whether you realize it or not, people associate or want to be associated with that identity, that brand, that thing. And that effect is going to work with your platforms. Now, it's not just branding and marketing, as you see several examples here, but it's very much actively doing this internal marketing, telling people about it, figuring out how to win them over, convince them. Tactical things like every quarter, I recommend having some kind of ongoing internal conference. Could be online, could be in person. I think annually, having some kind of event or being involved in that annual technical event is very important. And you want to start building up customer references, proof that this is working, because that's what in large organizations you end up doing a lot, is proving that you're useful and that you're solving the issues, because you're going to be competing in a very zero-sum way with other initiatives in your large organization, for better, usually for worse. And so you need to think about this marketing. How do you get your customers seeing why your platform is great and proving to them through customer references, developers saying you're great and going over what they've done, and having that be part of the way that you market to people. Now, to that end, I think it's really important right from the beginning to think about the metrics that you're gathering that you're going to show outside of the organization. Think about when you're going to need to get more budget. You're going to have to convince people that your platform is working. I mean, one of the curses of a platform that works really well is people forget about it. Like the way that I think about it is like, a toilet has no value until it breaks. No one thinks about it as valuable until it's not there. And anything that's working really well is similar, right? Until it breaks, people don't really think about it. So it's important to, not only because of that, but in general, to start gathering from the beginning, think about metrics that show the value to your organization, not just uptime and things like that. You want to gather those on your own, release frequency. But how do you explain why this platform is valuable and start gathering and reporting on those? And here's some that we've used over the years and that our people we work with have used over the years. It's a start. You can do whatever you want, but I think it's a good template if you don't really know what to do to start with, understand these and modify them. Now, thinking about how you scale this in a large organization, this is another thing that I think is, um, it's not like only large organizations have to deal with this, but large organizations have to do this a lot more. Is starting with one team, going to two teams, and we're talking, on the order of 500, sometimes even 1,000 teams, if not more applications. And here, this is another sort of marketing thing, is you want to slowly build up with one team. And then if you're really lucky enough that you can do pairing, you can take people, whether you're literally doing pair programming or pair operations, but start taking people from those initial teams and seed them into new teams, right? So think about, you're not only spreading knowledge and know-how and training, but you're spreading knowledge through peer-to-peer word of mouth marketing. And you see this over and over again. And eventually, you've got 2, 4, 6, 8, however that progression goes. But you're really starting to seed and then grow those teams and really thinking about how you do that as you move on. Uh, Now, another thing that I think platform teams at large organizations, especially now, are facing, and that becomes important, is thinking about what they would call sovereign cloud. I mean, sovereign cloud. I think if you're not an American IT person or working in America, sovereign cloud basically just means not American clouds. It means clouds that are under your control in whatever region that you are. It's kind of a weird thing since most of the top three and a lot of tech companies are American companies. We Americans don't really think about it as American. I'm sure some people are getting all upset about me saying that now. But if you go to the rest of the world, like, they might have some issue with using this kind of single sourced cloud from their perspective, right? And so this idea of running platforms globally in large organizations, having it in the regions you want, the jurisdictions that you want, becomes incredibly important. And it's worth thinking about how your platform supports that, if it needs to support it, kind of how you can move things around if needed. Like that kind of portability is actually very valuable nowadays. And I mean, hopefully it won't become increasingly so, and maybe even less, but it's certainly something that comes up all the time. So finally, kind of as an example of this, because one of the things that this is a good example of is the product managing of a platform versus just giving capabilities, right? Part of what product management is figuring out what your customers need and figuring out how you can deliver it to them that fits in the way you want to do things, right? That satisfies the needs that you as the provider, the vendor, if you will, the platform team has, but also satisfies what your customers are. And we have this great opportunity to see this in action with people standing up AI. Now, I think over the past year and a half, like I have seen a lot of people doing initial projects, POCs, a lot of people hiring big consulting firms to just write a bunch of Python stuff for them. But this year, and for the next couple of years, I think they're finally mainstreaming how they do this, how they do AI. And if you look at where these AI workloads are running, you see again this split of 50-50, where there's a lot of on-premises stuff, private cloud, and equally a lot of public cloud things. But this is important to think about when you're figuring out your AI stuff, is that it is going to be a lot of private cloud use that's out there. Now, let's look at what I think the different roles start to do. And I think what's emerging is that the platform team is focusing on running access to the models, just like they would run a database, having the manageability and control and things like that. So think about AI just as another middleware service that you're providing from a platform perspective. And think about how you apply all the same functionality and things to it that you would other services, which should slip into your platform pretty easily. It's just a new service that you're providing that's thrilling and exciting. Well, that's an overview of what I think is applicable to people who are doing platform engineering in private cloud. Thanks for listening, and good luck. I'll see you next time.